Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday as we roll through the candidates for governor in Arizona. Particularly, we know Fred Duvall. He's been on the program. Obviously, he's the only Democrat announced. But we've been going through the Republican candidates, and this is somebody you have seen in your living room pretty much every night for the last month. Republican candidate for Governor Christine Jones. Great to see you. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We were just talking before we started rolling. When was the moment that you said, this is something I want to do?
Well, deciding to run for governor was a big decision. Obviously, my husband and I went through this decision-making process carefully together, but over a number of months and with lots of encouragement from friends and family, I finally did decide. I filed last August to run and announced in October. So, you know, sometime last summer probably was that moment where we kind of tipped over to deciding to finally do it. And we're really glad we did, because now this conservative sort of non-establishment message that we've brought has turned out to resonate with people all over the state. And so we're very encouraged by the decision that we made.
Let's do a quick thumbnail of your bio. It's really interesting. You grew up in Denver, right?
Right.
First girl to play on the all-boys basketball league in Denver?
Yeah, my mom was actually a bit of a political activist herself, and I had only brothers, 2 older brothers and 2 stepbrothers, and of course the kid's sister wanted to play basketball, but there was no girls basketball team back then. So my mom went down to the YMCA and said, hey, you know, I think we should make some kind of an arrangement. And for several years there, I was the only girl in the whole league. So much so that the other little boy teams would come around to the games and they would point and they would say, you know, I think that might be a girl over there.
This became an early political battle.
Certainly for my mom, who was definitely a person of action.
Would you consider yourself a feminist?
Well, if you define feminist as a person who seeks equality for women, that is definitely me. You know, I'm definitely an unapologetic conservative, and I definitely lead that way. So as it relates to approaches to things, I may not have the feminist bent, but I definitely think it's time for us to put aside gender biases and seek equality for women.
Okay, so you get out of Denver, you end up going to Auburn, graduate from Auburn. How'd you end up at Auburn?
Well, actually, I ran off to join the Air Force. I went to the University of Oklahoma and joined ROTC. And rather than, you know, going on to active duty, I met a guy who was in the Air Force. And so I got out of the ROTC program, married him, and the Air Force transferred us to Alabama. So that's how I ended up.
This is your current husband now? My
current husband. We've been married for 27 years.
Wow.
That poor guy's been putting up with me.
And what does he do? He was an Air Force pilot?
No, he was not a pilot. He was a missile launch officer, and then he was in the command channel for, you know, probably the last couple of, well, I was going to say a couple decades, but, you know, the last 15 or 20 years of his career. But he's retired now from the Air Force, and he actually runs the ROTC detachment at a high school here in the Valley. Now,
you end up a CPA, you end up a lawyer. Were you in public accounting with a big firm, one of the big 8?
Nope, I actually worked in both retail and commercial banking for a number of years as a CPA, and then decided to go back to law school, mostly because I wanted to be a singer, and my dad told me that I should probably have a professional career to fall back on. So I became a CPA.
Rock and roll?
No, country for sure, country. And gospel, yeah.
Country and gospel.
Yeah.
You still sing?
I sing at church, and when I have time, campaign activities permitting, I actually lead on Sunday mornings at my church. Yeah.
And you can do the national anthem if you need to do it.
You know, it is the highest honor, and since it's 4th of July weekend, I'll be serious for a minute. It is one of the highest honors that I've ever had to be asked to sing the anthem at military events. And there are a couple of organizations who routinely invite me every time they have a formal dinner or, you know, some kind of military celebration. And honestly, you know, as the kid who always cried at the anthem, I consider it one of the honors of my life to do it.
I mean, you're bathed in red, white, and blue today. You've got your scarf on. You love this country, obviously.
I do. And, you know, I think on the 4th of July weekend, on the weekend that we celebrate our independence, we should remember what it took to get us here. You know, this place didn't happen for free.
That is a great segue, because what got us here in Arizona is a string, and let's show tape number 3, is a string of strong, very capable women governors. And obviously, Jan Brewer comes to mind right now. She's the current governor, but Rose Mofford, Jane Hull, Janet Napolitano. Do you feel it's an interesting place where Arizona is right now? We have had a long, successful string of women governors. How does that pave the way for you, potentially?
Well, I certainly admire very much the path that's been paved by these other women who fought the good fight to, you know, to establish women in positions of authority. But I also think that, at least in my race, I have the benefit of people looking at who is the best qualified, who's going to make the best leader for the state. And hopefully the gender issue has been put aside in favor of, let's pick the person who carries our conservative message, who inspires us, who comes at this with no strings attached. And I think much more so than being a woman, being a powerful, proven leader has been what's resonated.
How
for
are
me.
you like her and how are you dislike her?
A couple of things immediately come to mind when I see her. She bounces when she talks. I do that too. She has a level of enthusiasm and a great love for the state of Arizona, which I immensely admire and I share with her. She also has been very strong to stand up to the federal government. And this
on the
is
border, particularly.
On the border in particular, but also on other issues. And right now she's fighting with the Obama administration, laying the groundwork for me to take on and carry on that fight with regard to border security. And I'm sure you've seen my plan on that. But I've had an opportunity to stand up to the federal government, and it's not that easy when they come back and they push, but sometimes you just have to say no, not on my watch. You're not going to get away with that. And that's something that she and I probably share uniquely, at least among the candidates in my race.
A couple things in her tenure that I have to ask you about. Number one, and let's roll the video of it because I want to get your take on it. And I asked you this during a debate we did a week ago. Tape number one, John Huppenthal. I asked you, would you, if you were governor right now, ask him to resign and pull him aside privately and say, John, I don't think you can lead education right now, given this baggage with the blogging and the nasty stuff that was said on the blog?
Well, I come at this exactly the way I come at everything else, and that is with a constitutional analysis. It is up to the voters to decide whether this gentleman continues to represent them. There are 2 elections between now and the inauguration of whoever becomes the superintendent, and the voters will get to pick. The exception to that, and where I would affirmatively ask a member of the administration to resign, is if he broke the law. I have zero tolerance for that. To the extent that public officials engage in misconduct or use their office for their personal gain, I think they have to go away.
He's really not a member of the administration because he's duly elected as well as a state school superintendent. So yeah, he is really not under your purview, right?
That's exactly right. And that's why I say it is to the voters to make this decision. And obviously...
What do you think he should do?
You know, I'm sure that he is in an abject personal crisis right now. And us criticizing him is probably not helpful. But I would ask him to search his heart and say, am I the most effective leader for the people of Arizona for this time and this place? A critical analysis that I had to do myself as I was considering to run for governor. And if he comes up with the decision that I came up with, then of course he's going to continue to run.
1062. This was a really interesting thing because to a lot of people it was really not an issue and should never have become an issue. My question to you regarding Governor Brewer, should she have made her intentions known earlier so we would not get beat up as we were by the national media, saying Arizona is a backwater, blah, blah, blah. It reinforced every bad stereotype that Arizona has out there. You know, you travel around.
Yeah, first of all, I think she did the right thing. She had to veto the bill. And if I had been governor, I would have done the same thing. Although what I did as a candidate was to say to the legislature, I think you ought to withdraw the bill because, frankly, you're solving a problem that doesn't exist. And should this become an issue, we will ensure together as a community that no professional should have to provide services that would violate their deeply held religious belief or their conscience. That's what the Constitution says. Religious freedom is the single most important fundamental principle upon which this country was founded. But let's not create crisis where it doesn't exist. Let's not give the media, particularly the liberal media, the opportunity to define something as discrimination that had nothing to do with discrimination at all.
The case out of New Mexico. This is where I wonder on 1062. Where did common sense completely get thrown out the window? If you are a religious, very religious person and you have a problem providing services for a gay marriage, you have a moral objection to it. If you expressed that to the couple and said, listen, I wish you well, I can't help you, I can't do a wedding cake for you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't a prudent person say, thank you for telling me, I will find somebody else? Or even in the best of all worlds, that person says, I can't serve you in good conscience, I wish you well, and let me give you the name of some other people you could go to. Isn't that how the world should work? Why do we end up in litigation in the Supreme Court and in stupid laws about stuff that people should be able to figure out on their own?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One, there's a leadership issue there to say, you know, you don't always have to elect somebody who understands the law, but once in a while it's good to have somebody who understands the Constitution and how it intersects with the law. The second piece is, I love that these people care about religious freedom. I care about religious freedom. But let's not create and solve for problems that have never presented themselves, because the good news for all of us is that in Arizona, it is the law that you can refuse services to people if it's something that you don't want to provide. What that law would have done, and the reason I think the governor did the right thing, is it actually shifted the burden onto the service provider and made it worse for those people, not better, in terms of refusing to provide services. So thoughtful legislation, good leadership, good community involvement could go a long way to saving our reputation.
What motivates you in this race? What is it that you want to fix in Arizona?
Well, to say what's to fix, I mean, I really think that we have come a long way. You know, when Governor Brewer took over, the state was in a huge financial crisis, and she and the legislature have navigated through some really difficult times.
Did she do the right thing by pushing for a tax?
Well, I would not have done the 1 cent sales tax, and you know, I've said there are a couple of things that I would have done differently. Nevertheless, it's easy for us to sit here and throw hand grenades into the stadium when we didn't have to have part of that conversation. I think my highest goal is to take and build on what they've done and what in the groundwork that she laid, to say in economic development, in education, in enforcement of immigration law, in securing the border, where can we be in a number of years given where we are today? And that's kind of how my vision in my head looks and where I see the state going. And I'm actually, frankly, really excited about the prospects, because there are lots of incredible people in this state and they want to be involved and want to be part of the solution and part of the improvement.
I diverged off your bio for a moment because we got into other issues.
Somehow that had to do with my bio.
We have not talked about GoDaddy.
Yeah.
Because that's really where you made your mark in the business and professional world. You end up at GoDaddy in what year?
I was recruited to go there in late 2001 and it was a tiny little startup company that nobody had ever heard with this crazy name. And
why did Bob have it here in Arizona, Bob Parsons?
Well, his original company had been in Cedar Rapids, and he owned a piece of property here and decided he really liked Arizona. So he landed and settled and decided to invest here. And when he got here, he learned the same thing my husband and I learned when we came here, and that is that Arizona is one of the last great free states in the country. And he fell in love with the place just like we did, and he never left. Like
we all did.
Yeah.
The people have been around for a while.
Yeah.
So how does he find you to recruit you? How did they find you?
Well, interestingly, I had worked with one of my former colleagues was doing outside legal work for the company, and they said they were looking for somebody who had a business and a law background. Of course, I'm a CPA and had been in accounting for a number of years, so that's kind of how they tracked me down. But I was not looking for a job. It kind of came out of the blue. I just joined thinking I'd have a couple of years to help set up this company and put some policies and procedures in place and build out their
counsel,
HR.
that was your job, right?
Well, and yeah, more part of the business as well, because it was very small at the time and you kind of do everything. But I thought, I'll hang out there for a couple of years and then I'll go back to a law practice.
When the really racy, sexy ad started, did you raise an objection to that and say, hey guys, come on, what are we doing here?
Well, the way the Super Bowl came up is we were wondering why everybody wasn't buying from us. And because we had a great value proposition and we had the best service. And
you sold, GoDaddy sells domain names. That's what it really did.
And internet hosting and all of the things that a small business would need to get online. And so we really went out to the Super Bowl to get our name out in more common understanding. It's very difficult to describe what you do in 30 seconds. So part of the ad approach was to get people to go to the website. And you know, would I have picked to have beautiful women in our ads?
Cavorting.
Well, they didn't cavort, John. Come on now. But you know, would I have picked that? Probably not. I don't think I ever would have thought to put women in the ads. But you know, nevertheless, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't my favorite approach.
Did you object?
But well, some of the ads got changed as a result of my review of them.
Oh, so you said, hey, look, I think this goes too far.
In some cases, but it's really important to remember the marketing department at GoDaddy was at that time run entirely by women. And they were not offended by it. Our customers were not offended by it for the most part. But we did end up building an incredible Arizona success story, creating thousands of jobs, and we are immensely proud that we succeeded in an environment where the government was trying to stand up roadblocks to our success. So, you know, the ads were part of that.
When we come back with Christine Jones, some of your questions, I threw them out, put it up on Facebook to see what you want to ask of this potential next governor of Arizona. She's a candidate in a crowded field for Republican nomination. We're back on Newsmaker Sunday with Christine Jones in a moment. Back with the Republican candidate for governor, Christine Jones. When you see your ads on TV at night, how do you feel?
Well, of course, you're the most critical about yourself, but it does actually kind of inspire me that there's somebody who's not part of the establishment that's willing to get involved and take leadership. And then I think, oh, wait, that's me. Yeah, right. I'm going to vote for her. Oh, yeah, right.
Does it make you uncomfortable to see those? Do you ever look at it and go, oh, man, I wish I'd done that differently?
Well, of course.
Because you come off pretty strong on those. It's not touchy-feely. I mean, if you're trying to appeal to the heart of voters, that ad, being very honest, may not do it. You come across very capable and very stern and very smart, but it's not like, wow, I want to go give her a hug. You seem like you're in command of the room and you're like, wow, look out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a balance there, and some of that is a little weird with the gender issue, but when I look at it, I think, yeah, she knows what she wants to do.
Okay, I put it out on Facebook. Let's take a look back here. I wanted to, let people set up some questions for you.
You're so tech savvy.
Yeah, this is a joke because you're in that world. Richard Nixon once said, you can win the Republican nomination with the conservative vote, but you can't win the presidency with just the conservative vote. Is declaring that you are an unapologetic conservative enough to garner the support of the growing number of independents in Arizona? It's a great question.
Great question, and obviously there are two elections here. The primary is the one that I'm running for right now, but I would say unequivocally yes, because if you talk about excellence in education and economic development and the enforcement of immigration law, coming at that from a conservative, practical, business, results-oriented approach doesn't offend anybody, okay? Everybody wants the border to be secured. You don't have to be a conservative to figure that out. Having an open border, having drug trafficking and dangerous goods coming across our desert border every single day is not good for this state. So, yeah, I think unequivocally there are plenty of independents who resonate with this message. There's
a question coming, but I'll ask you. What does the governor do about securing the border? I mean, it's really a federal issue. We've been through this with 1070. What could you really do as governor to fix this issue with the, well, we can roll the video if you'd like, Ellis, but these illegal immigrants coming from Central America. What would you do as governor in that case?
Well, two separate issues. The immigration policy is definitely federal policy, and the Congress needs to fix it. Up to this point, they've shown no desire to do so. So what I looked at is as a practical matter, what can the governor do to really make a difference on this? And you can, in fact, work on the securing of the border. The highest goal of the governor is to provide a stable, safe, and secure environment for the citizens of the state. That will be my #1 goal. So I can send troops to the border to support law enforcement. They have the authority to arrest and incarcerate people who are breaking the law. The National Guard troops can support them. I can install technology at the border, and we can use readily available technology.
Where do you get the money for this stuff?
Well,
I mean, we're strapped.
It's a lot of money. My plan, and you can read it on my website, christinejones.com, calls for about $270 million to be spent by the state on this approach. But it's important also to note that the state of Arizona today spends about $2.8 billion every single year educating, incarcerating, and providing medical services to people who are citizens of other countries.
So you're saying it's money well spent?
We cannot afford not to do this, okay? We've got to get some of that $2.8 billion back into services for people of Arizona.
Okay, here's another question from Facebook. Why did you not run for AG? Great question. You're a lawyer. Why did you shoot for governor right off the bat?
That's a great question, and I think in your life you should be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I did work in a prosecutor's office while I was in law school, and I loved the notion of being in court and trying to put away bad guys.
You did not try cases.
I did try cases all by myself.
Because this became a big issue.
It did become a big issue. And
you tried cases.
Of course I tried cases. And the fact that I didn't get paid for it, I guess that it's considered a bad thing, that I was doing it on a volunteer basis. But no, I tried cases both in lots of drug cases, as it turned out, and DUIs and all sorts of things. But The reason I didn't run for Attorney General, although I probably would have made a fine Attorney General, is because my highest talent, my gift in life is the vision piece and saying, let me look at the collective circumstances, and I focus very quickly on what a solution might be, and that's why I decided to run for governor.
Let's take a look at another one. Marriage equality. This came up on Facebook. Marriage equality, yes or no?
Well, look, I am in favor of traditional marriage. And by the way, you mentioned my husband. I've been in a traditional marriage for 27 years. I highly recommend it. But I'm also a fierce defender of the Constitution. And if you're going to defend the Constitution, you have to defend all of it. And marriage is an issue for the church. The state doesn't get to tell the church what it wants to do. So if your church wants to marry gay people, your church gets to marry gay people, no matter how much I don't like it. By the same token, if your church doesn't want to marry gay people, it doesn't have to. We don't get to tell it it has to do that.
But from a state point of view, it's a recognition of rights.
And
benefits.
Fundamentally, I think this is exactly a recognition of rights issue. In fact, I'm well on the record saying I predict at some point in the future, everybody will have the opportunity and the ability to designate one person who is a beneficiary of their benefits, without regard to whether they're married, whether they're related, or anything else.
But you would not call that marriage.
Well, it could be your mom.
It's the term.
It could be your sister. You could be old maids together, and it could be your roommate. It really, if it comes down to benefits, I think that's where we're going with it. But as it relates specifically to marriage, our Constitution defines it as between one man and one woman. As the governor, my goal and my job is to enforce the Constitution.
Okay, one more thing, and I didn't know that you had opined about Hillary Clinton, but I wanted to read this. This also came in. How much are you really aligned with the political viewpoints of Hillary Clinton, if we'll put up the final one here? And in your opinion, would Hillary make an effective president if elected? Did you opine about Hillary recently? I missed it.
I think Hillary Clinton is the last person we want to be elected president of the United States. And in fact, I think Benghazi probably will be her political undoing. I was quoted about a year and a half ago as saying that as compared to John Kerry, who was being talked about as Secretary of State, as bad as she was going to look good by comparison. That was turned into an ad that suggested that somehow Hillary Clinton and I are best friends. Nothing could be further from the truth, right? Hillary Clinton is a big government liberal Democrat. I'm a conservative Republican. But you know what, John? There used to be a time where you could say something nice, even about people with whom you disagree.
I completely agree with you on that.
And it was a sign of strength,
I
not
agree with you on that, and I think we've lost that in the political discourse.
We have really lost
And I don't believe that Republicans or Democrats, either party has the corner on good ideas.
Not at all, and neither party has the corner on criticism. They like to criticize each other equally well.
When we come back with Christine Jones, how she ended up a Republican. Back on Newsmaker Sunday in a moment. Final moments with Christine Jones, Republican candidate for governor. I want to show you, you talk a lot about the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
You're a shooter.
I am.
Let's show some video. Why is this important in this election?
Well, as I say, I'm a fierce defender of the Constitution, and the reason we've done 21 Second Amendment events now all over the state is because people understand the Second Amendment gave us the first, and it gives us the ability to defend and protect against all of the others.
One shot in the shoulder.
Really, the Second Amendment for me became very personal when I was at GoDaddy and started to be threatened based on, websites we were shutting down and that sort of thing. So it became really a personal protection issue for me. But as we go out to these gun shops and we meet with people, there are a lot of people that come in that have never owned a gun, that never intend to own a gun, but they care about the Constitution. And the Second Amendment focuses this for people. Mm-hmm. It is to say, I care about the entirety of the Constitution, and as your governor, I'm going to stand up for it for you.
How did you become a Republican?
I think I was born a Republican. And in fact, I read an article once that it's in your DNA, but my mother was a very conservative Republican, growing up in Colorado.
And she was politically active.
Politically active. I've from my earliest childhood memories, was working on campaigns and running door to door and attending precinct committeeman meetings.
Did you know you would run one day?
No. Well, probably in the second grade, I wanted to be the president just like everybody else. But the more time I spent advocating for policy in Congress, the less likely it was for me to run, because I thought I was effective not being in office.
You spent $2 million of your own money on this.
Yeah.
Does that hurt to spend that much? I mean, you're a wealthy woman. I understand that, but...
Well, listen, what I said all along is my campaign would have the resources to be heard. I would spend what I needed to spend to get my positive conservative message out. I don't say bad things about my opponents unless they're not true. Something they says is not true. But what I really wanted to do, and what's really freeing for me as opposed to other candidates, is I wanted to raise votes, not money. And that has been the single biggest advantage I've had as I've gone all over the state, is not owing anybody anything, not tying myself down to big donors and corporate interests and that sort of thing, to be able to hear every single voice. So is it painful to spend your money? Of course, but is it worth it for the state of Arizona? You bet.
Even if you lose?
Even if you lose. But as I said at the beginning, if I do this, I'm going to win.
All right, 15 seconds. What would you want voters to know about you, about your heart, as they think about this vote?
You know, here's what I want people to know. I have an immense amount of respect for the other people in this race. I think they're good guys. But even with these gentlemen already in place, 2 state office holders, a mayor, people who've been in office, there's still a vacuum. And it needs to be filled by a fearless, determined, proven leader. It's why I'm running for governor. Christine Jones, and I'd love your support.
Wow, that's quite a pitch. Thank you for your time. Good to see you. Best of luck in the primary, and we'll chat down the road. Okay. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate it.